Okay, we're live. All right, what's up, guys? John Sintez here, Cass Kreitlow, Cutternation podcast. We're back from the depths, number 99. I say this every time, but I wish I threw 99.
The great one, the
right.
Wayne Gretzky episode.
Or the Wild Thing, whichever one you want to go with it, right?
Oh,
this could
man.
get a little...
Well, we got a Minnesota guy on right here, and state of hockey, we're definitely going great one here.
All right, so Pat Casey, everybody. Pat, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, let everybody know where you're at, what's going on, and floor is yours. Why don't you run with it?
Yeah, no problem. I'm Pat Casey. I'm a hitting coach at the University of Minnesota with the Golden Gophers up here in the Big Ten Conference. This will be my 8th year now at Minnesota. I've been doing the hitting and catching up here now for quite a while. I was actually at the University of St. Thomas, so I went against Cass a few times when I was over there when he was a pitcher. He was pretty good for Hamlin.
I can't wait to hear about that.
I didn't even know that, dude. I played, I was clueless.
This is the infamous right here. I'm jacked. I'm excited.
Yeah, we actually went against you. I think it was 2011 and 12, if I remember correctly, and then
10 and 11.
10 and 11, and we saw you guys in the MIAC tournament, and this was at Minnetonka, and I want to say in 2011 that was the first time we had lost the tournament and Hamlin had won it. So yeah, and you were pitching. You were tough. The slider was pretty tough on us. I remember that day, and I think you had beat us earlier that year too. So yeah,
we swept you, and I didn't pitch. We swept you with nobody. I mean, if they watch it, they just weren't. We didn't throw our 1 and 2. We always threw our 3 and 4 and saw what we could do and try to beat everybody else. So
yeah, we that was the year that I want to say we won the MIAC that year, but then you guys won the tournament, and we both went to the regional that same year. But anyways, not to get off track. No, I've been up here in Minnesota for a while. I went to scout school with the Minnesota Twins, and so I did some work with them for a while. And then I went to Butler University in Indianapolis, and got an opportunity to come back home here to the University of Minnesota in 2014. And I've been here ever since, and we've had a little success at Minnesota in the meantime, but it's been a pretty good run so far. And that's a little bit background on me. And then I guess the other part of it is I grew up around the game because my grandfather was the voice of the Twins for 44 years, and then my dad was the scout with the Twins as well. So that's one of the reasons why I went into scouting. And I got an opportunity to grow up around the game, and ever since then, it's just been a good ride, and baseball's been pretty good for me. And this is an awesome opportunity to talk to you guys all the way out on the West Coast here. So I appreciate you guys for having me.
No, it's been great. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day, jumping over here and chatting with us, because Cass informed me some stuff. I feel like we're gonna have a really good conversation when we get a little bit deeper into the rabbit hole on the fun stuff. But so the obvious, right? Like, tell me what Cass Kreitlow was in college. What was the report on the guy, right? Like, how does this go? This is the first thing. I know all of our people want to know. Like,
yeah.
Here, let me refresh, because I know exactly when I threw against St. Thomas better than you would. So I threw against Schuld in my junior year, and we were terrible. We didn't make the playoffs. Me and Schuld got honorable mentions that year because I threw a one-hitter, 9 2/3 one-hitter. We 3-hit you guys and got swept.
You made it to the 10th?
Yeah, I threw 9. I gave up a 2-2 slider away, single the other way to your leadoff guy.
My goodness! I can't believe you remember this, man. This is a long
his memory is tight. His memory is very tight.
Then because then I retired, because we just played 7 then, and it was so I retired 22 batters in a row, which would have been a perfect game. And then
this is at our place, right?
Yeah, this is at your place. It was misty. I biked to the game, and Verdugo talks. He always shares this story because he's like, bro, that was one of the best D3 pitching things I've ever seen, and my freaking starting pitcher biked home on his 1976 Schwinn. But yeah, dude, if you guys didn't have Schuld, I'm freaking crazy, national pitcher of the week. Schuld is just
no
so that was the first time I faced you guys, and then the last year it was just in the conference tournament. So I don't think I threw besides those two. So anyway. That was
that's
it.
pretty great.
I just wanted to let you know because I only threw against you twice.
I barely remember that, man. That's unbelievable that you remember. But to answer your question, I mean, he was tough. He threw pretty hard. He had a good slider, and I mean, he'll tell you. I mean, Division III baseball in Minnesota is really, really good. I mean, our MIAC conference then was really good. We had a pitcher at McAllister. I don't know if you remember him, Cass, but he was really good too. Scholl obviously was really good. I forget his name. No,
James.
go ahead.
Of course. He knows it. Yeah.
Dude, I went. So this is crazy. I went to McAllister on a visit because a buddy of high school went there, and I forget James's last name, but he's from Chicago. He did not belong in our thing, but he had like a 34 on his ACT, and gosh, yeah, he was. Yeah. I think he was a year older than me and was there the whole time. I mean, you know what I mean. But
he was James, really good. Really good.
And then my senior year, you had said that you guys won the conference. You guys were 16-4, McAllister was 16-4, and we were 15-5. That shit never happens. And
I can't believe you remember that, man. Yeah.
Dude, it's my senior year. I was playing.
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
And
you remember the bad ones, the ones that really sting, you know? Those don't go away.
McAllister had a pus thrower that was leading the nation in ERA. And the dude didn't hit 80, and he was but he threw 3 pitches.
A lefty, a little lefty or something like that. I remember that. Yeah,
it was real. Then that was the first year they had the little cage set in. That was I had one loss that year against Buena Vista, and then you guys McAllister was a no decision for me because Anyway.
Yeah, but he was tough, man. To answer your question, he was not easy. I mean, Hamlin had those 2 years. Even the seven inning game, now that you say that, it brings back some memories, but they were tough under Verdugo. He had a good head coach there, and they had some pretty good players. And I mean, Scholl went on to go, I think he ended up in AA because I just saw him a few years ago because I was in his wedding. And I mean, he was another guy that probably didn't belong in Division III. I mean, neither did you. And it was a really good conference. And that's why there's so many teams from Minnesota, Wisconsin that ended up in the regional. It was just really good baseball. And that was kind of my springboard into getting involved because I wanted to go into scouting a little bit. I was involved in doing some lessons in Minnesota at the time. And that I was just finishing up my undergrad and graduate at St. Thomas. And it was just an opportunity to get involved. And kind of like you, Cass, I mean, there were really good schools in the MIAC, obviously McAllister, Hamlin, St. Thomas, St. Olaf, and whatnot. So I'd finished my degrees there and kind of sprung into working with the Twins, and then ultimately got a job in the Northwoods League there. And that kind of pushed me into the game, so to speak. So it's
I know we're going to get that because I haven't been here forever. Last thing about MIAC baseball, and then I'm done, I promise. Of course, I'm
not done. I have questions.
Okay, tell us about that St. Olaf team in 2010 and you guys winning. Or what?
It was 9. Yeah,
it
was 2009.
Because that's the best team. I no offense, but that was the best team. Most people said that was the best team they ever saw in the MIAC, and you guys.
Yes, it was. They were loaded, and in fact, we were not even that good in 2009 when we won the national championship. They killed us. They absolutely destroyed us in the MIAC tournament, and that was at Dundas. Port moved to Minnetonka, and they absolutely killed us. I mean, I want to say they beat us like 16-2 in the conference championship game in the tournament there. And then we ended up in the same region together at Oshkosh, and we went out there, and I want to say they beat us, and it was a close game. It was a little bit closer. And then we went into the last day, and we had to beat them twice. And somehow we did. We threw Dan Leslie, who hadn't thrown the entire year. He hadn't thrown since he was like a freshman, and he was unbelievable. And we just swept them that last day, and it was a historic day for our program, and obviously not as good for St. Olaf. But, they were unbelievable. They had it was something, last name was Todd. He was shortstop, and he also a right-handed pitcher. He was really good. And we got lucky, Matt. We just played really well that last day. Matheson, that was there you go. Todd Matheson, that's who it was. He played short, and he also
and then he went and played indie ball with the Saints, and I'm pretty sure he hit way more than he pitched with Olaf. And then he's a starter for the Saints.
Yep, and then they had the Jones brothers. I want to say they had two, both from Northfield. They were both really good. So, that team was loaded. They were really, really good. St. Olaf was really good there in the mid to late 2000s, and we just got lucky, man. And it was a pretty good run. And then we went back to the World Series in 2013, or I'm sorry, 2012, my last year at St. Thomas. Then I think they went back the following year when I was with the Twins. And so it was a good run. I mean, we got a good opportunity to do that. But now I'd like to go to Omaha and the Division I World Series. I think that would be the kind of the pinnacle of, what you can really accomplish. So, But yeah, good times. It was a good run there at St. Thomas. Really good.
I cut you off when you were saying Northwoods. Where'd you coach in the Northwoods?
Waterloo. I coached there for 3 years. I was the coach of the year there in 2013. And it's actually what it kind of pushed, because at the time I was working for the Twins. And so they had given me kind of the free reign to do the stuff in the Northwoods League. And so they allowed me to do the coverage and coach at the exact same time. And we had this unbelievable season. We won 51 games. It was unbelievable. It was really cool. And
hey, what do you say?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So we broke those records, and it was a great year. And then we had 3 kids on the team for Butler. And then they wanted me to be their hitting coach. So I went to Butler, and then the Minnesota job just sprung open in December of that year. And then our head coach at Butler had also played for the Gophers, and he kind of pushed me to take it. He's like, I don't know if this is ever going to open again. You should see if you can get it. I don't know if I would do this if it was Indiana, and it just happened to work out, and I got a chance to come home, and been here ever since now. So it was a pretty cool deal.
Where'd you go to high school?
Academy of Holy Angels out in Richfield there. So I'm from Bloomington.
Stars.
Yeah, exactly.
Fun fact, I got into coaching because I did the Dan Gladden baseball camp. That's where it all started with Gene Larkin.
Okay. Yeah, right down the street from me. I live in Bloomington now. So, those guys are right down the street. We have some guys that still do a lot of work with Gino and some of those guys out in Eden Prairie. So pretty good deal there, man.
Love it.
Right on. So I have some really good questions for you because I'm always intrigued about how the evaluation works and the different levels of NCAA. I was a D2 guy. You're coaching at D1. Both of you guys played D3. Now, in my experience of the vast range of baseball players that I've played with and against, to me, I just can't see a difference sometimes in some of these D1 to D3 guys when it comes to how they play the game. Cass always talks about how good the baseball was. I know the level of baseball that I was around in Florida, the D2 school that I was at, and then playing professionally, looking at some of these D1 type guys. Could you shed some light on, what you see the difference in, your perspective of a D1 guy to a D3 guy, and maybe, especially since you played there, because it's probably easy for you to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, and I actually played at the University of North Dakota, and then I finished out my 2 degrees at St. Thomas. So I'm actually played D2, started out D3, and then ended up here at Minnesota. But no, I know exactly what you mean. I would say the biggest thing is probably the tools, I would say. And, at the Division III level, you're going to run into some kids that have 1 or 2 of those tools. You're going to get some guys that can really hit, maybe some guys that can throw pretty hard. But very rarely are you going to have a guy on the pitching side of things that's going to have a 3-pitch mix, or is going to be a guy that has fastball and fastball command at the same time. So we had a first round pick this last year. It's a number 3 overall pick, Max Meyer, to the Miami Marlins. And Max had 3 things that most high school pitchers in Minnesota don't have. He had a fastball that was at the time 92 to 94. He had fastball command, but he also had a slider or a cutter that nobody could hit. And so he had 3 things right there that you're not going to see very often in Minnesota pitchers. And our pitchers up here usually take a little bit longer to develop just because they're not outside. We don't have the weather that they do out there in California. So our guys are playing multiple sports, and those tools take a little bit longer to develop, especially on the mound. So I would say that the tools are usually the thing that separates most of them. And then really the pedigree of the player. When you're looking at position players, if you look at West Coast kids, you look at Arizona kids, kids from Oregon, even those kids, they're so much more polished defensively. They're so much more prudent at the plate. Like they have an idea of an approach. They're more professional. And the position players out there, just they're ahead of our kids out here in the Midwest just because they played more and they played better baseball. And so sometimes that factors into it as well. And you can just tell, like they just have, a different way that they go about the game, to how they prepare, to how they carry themselves on the field. And that type of pedigree is tough to find for kids up here in Minnesota. We're always going to produce really good arms, whether it be Cass or Matt Schultz or whomever. We're going to have some pretty good arms up here, but finding really good position players is tough to find at certain points. And I would really say that the tools are the toughest thing to disseminate against, between even kids at Minnesota, kids in Illinois, kids in Ohio, just all throughout the country. The position players are really the hardest thing to evaluate, I would say.
It's hard to project like what how they know the game and stuff, right? I guess that'd be really big too, like experience level at
Right.
That level of difficulty, right? It's funny that you say that, because that's exactly how we look at it too, especially on like the game side of what we're trying to teach over here. We'll be getting our new facility here soon, and live at bats to me seem to be the most important thing of the game. If you break it down to the fundamental level, you got to be able to do one of those two things on there. You got to be able to hit or pitch. And so, that basically is the game. That's as fundamental as you can get to it. So I understand what you're saying on that. And my history of looking at the athletes and trying to figure out, is this guy a D1? Like you're saying, the tools, a lot of the evaluation systems have increased, how easy it is. You can see a kid's top exit velo and stuff, or, what his 60 time is, and how that translates to what, if he's going to be a runner. If the kid's only got 70 exit velo, but he's a 6'4" guy, that sounds like a slap double guy if I've ever heard one,
Right.
So on the technology side of that, is that something you guys bring up and you try to evaluate?
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say is, getting back to the evaluation piece of it, is you identify the athletes on the front end that can obviously play, the guys that can hit, run, catch, throw, hit for some power and whatnot. And then you start getting into the metrical side of it. But before I get into that, like, one of the things that we really look for are the kids, and this is kind of a phrase that we've used more often than not now, has been, who are the kids that are the dominating players? Who are the kids that go into competition and they dominate that level? And the kids that, maybe they don't have the best tools, but you find the kids that are the best competitors and the best ball players, so to speak. And that's one thing that we've caught ourselves finding more and more of, and looking more and more of, are the kids that, who's the best player on the field. And being that you played pro ball, when you go out and you watch a kid play, I'm sure you can tell right away who the best player on that field is, just by the way they carry themselves, where they are in the lineup, where they're playing on the field. And you can just tell, like, they carry themselves a certain way. And then usually their numbers, their performances back that up. But, to get back to the medical side of it, we use everything at our prospect camps to evaluate these kids, because that's usually the best time you can do it, because you're not going to get TrackMan on these TrackMan data on these kids from their high school fields. You're going to be able to get some of that from PBR and Perfect Game, but for the most part, you're going to try and get them at your prospect camp. You're going to get blast on them. You're going to try and get your TrackMan data on them, hit tracks, try and hook them up to K-Vest, and try and see the way that their body moves. We're going to try and put them on Rapsodo hitting or Rapsodo pitching, and try and see their spin metrics, and try and see their exit velo, and, try and see how they spin the ball as hitters and whatnots. And you use all that information, but at the end of the day, can they play? And at the end of the day, are they going to be able to step into your program and be good character kids, and at the same time be able to help you win? And we've gotten kids in our program that are, metrical phenom. I've got kids that have hit the ball 110 miles an hour in our cages and have, put excellent spin on the ball, but at the end of the day, they can't play and they can't compete. And we see guys like that all the time. I'm sure in football, you saw guys like that could hit the ball 450, 500 feet in BP, but you get them into a game and they can't touch a left-handed breaking ball, and they can't get the job done, in the clutch. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you want that guy that's a competitor, that's a gamer. There's some good examples out there in big league baseball today, like guys like Altuve or Madrigal. I know I think he's Northern California, Southern California kid. We played against him in the Super Regional. Obviously, he's got some tools, but I mean, that kid was a gamer, and I think that's one of the things that good programs like Oregon State do, is they identify kids like that not only have tools, but that are gamers. And those guys ultimately win you games. And those are the guys that you're charged to find, metrics or not. But you just want those guys that know how to win games, and guys that are going to help you win. So that's really what we're looking for right now. And, it can be a challenge, especially up here in Minnesota.
So once I was gonna say, once you get them in, what are you doing? But if you had something, John, you wanted to add.
No, I loved that. It's a philosophy that we talk about, that it's refreshing that I don't hear that very much, right? Like the thing, what you see online with a lot of the stuff with the kids is the top 10 leaderboard, right? I had a couple buddies of mine that used to be some coaches in the Florida area, and they would talk about, we if we didn't even go to the tournament at the perfect game thing, when they started that whole database, you could just follow the kid through his journey and what it was. And you could see, like, he was 86, he was 86, he was 88, and just from there. And a lot of them are being found through, blowing up the radar gun first. And then, I had a buddy that had a formula of top 10 on velocity, top 10 on strikeouts, and then top 10 on ERA. And he would try to see if he could find a correlation between those, just to start a list, right, of who are these people, coming in on, and how they can get information on them. So, to hear that side of it, because that's all we talk about, is like, you can't hit 110 exit velo every time. Like it just doesn't work that way, right? The game is too hard when you know what it is, and you're not familiar with our style of pitching and stuff. But I'm trying to go Scherzer Maddox basically, so I'm spinning it, running it, doing everything I can to make it impossible for you to hit this thing, right? And so learning the game to us is just so important. Like, you have to learn how to win. Like, what do you think about this concept? Because Cass and I were talking about the other day. As a pitcher, all you need is 27 outs, 21 if you want to go there, right? But the longer the streak that you can have, the longer Cass Kreitlow can get like 12, 13, 14 guys in a row to start the game, the more frustrated you're probably going to be, and the more difficult of a chance you're going to be able to go.
The reason why we're bringing this up is because it's like nobody's even trying. It's like, what are we doing? Like, why are we trying to pitch to contact? Why aren't we trying to throw a perfect game every single time? And both of us have very distinct memories of like, and this, I didn't figure this out in college. Like, I was playing amateur baseball and coaching, and I'm like, oh, ah. So like 2014, I was like, I don't want to give up a hit. And I threw two 1-hitters that summer. It's like, I never tried to be that dominant. And as soon as I went into that with that kind of focus, it was like, I refuse to give it up. And it's just weird that it's not more common, right? What's the worst thing that could happen? So I'll say this. I think it's just simply like, it's the expectation that you could fail. You know what I mean? It's like the fear of failure. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, what I was going to say is it's funny you bring that up about pitching, because we have that same type of philosophy in hitting. Is why can you not go into a season and think you're not capable of hitting 400 to 450? Or you go into every game and you're trying to, as an offense, trying to get 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 hits every single game. And that should be, you talked about the expectation, the mental mindset going in is, why don't we think more like that? Why don't we think more, 4-dimensional when it comes to hitting? Like, we can do more than what we're doing right now. There's significantly more that we can achieve as athletes and that we train ourselves to do, but our expectation level, especially at the baseline, you look around a lot of these training facilities, nobody preaches approach, nobody preaches offense philosophy or things like that. And we get into the mindset that we can only achieve so much as hitters because we fail so much of the time. And that's true, but our expectations and our goals are so low. And I know exactly what you're talking about in that front, that, as pitchers, why are we not trying to go out every single time and throw a perfect game? And I think the same thing pertains to hitters. Why don't we have that same type of mindset and those expectations for ourselves as athletes? And I know I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's exactly the same type of philosophy. Only
right? Like if you had a dude on the mound, right? If you had a dude on the mound, he came out and like struck out 6 and went 12 guys in a row to start the game. Like we should be sitting pretty, right? Like we should be in the 5th, right?
Right.
Been through the the lineup 1.5 times, right? Probably shown a bunch of pitches, done some good stuff, haven't had any hard hit balls, right? Even if you walk a guy, right, and you went 9 in a row and then you got a double play, like, okay, it never really happened. You're still back to your streak. You know what I mean? Right. So like just trying to understand, like connecting it is something that we've asked questions a lot today where I just, when I talk to some of these people and we watch Major League Baseball or you watch some of the other stuff, there's just questions that when I played, I remember asking and be like, why can't I just strike out every person I face? Oh, well, you'll throw too many pitches. Yeah. Well, what if I just do it in 3 pitches or 4?
Right.
Yeah. Like it just never made sense to me. It was like, exactly. You're just telling me I can't do it. I don't know. Like, I'm pretty sure if I throw a banger on the first pitch and you cheat and you top it, you should be out. Like you should be out.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So you guys are talking about going against really the status quo of what people are teaching today and the mindset and the expectations that go into athletes, and really looking at things from a different perspective is what you're talking about.
Like a strategy. Like, let's teach 9-year-olds to not give up hits and just have that be their idea the rest of their life. Like, why would you let someone hit it? I just don't understand. Right? Yeah. You see it all the time. Big games in the Padres. We're following the Padres, obviously, over here, right? Big game for the Padres, right? They're playing the Dodgers. And we're throwing 2-0 fastballs to Jock Peterson. And I'm going like, what is going on? Who is telling these people to do this stuff? Right? If you're playing any video game and you push fastball 2-0 and Jock Peterson's up there, you're like, what are you doing? Like it just doesn't make sense. There's just so many other ways to do it,
Sure. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that different type of thinking is what the game needs. And it's the guys like that ultimately push the game forward. And I always tell our guys too, if you're doing it like everybody else, you're probably doing it wrong. So I think thinking differently and finding different ways to do things is, really the way that you make your mark. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think that there's way too many people out there today that try and just do what everybody else does instead of finding their own way to do things and get guys to think differently. I think what you're doing is right. So no, I couldn't agree with you more.
And it's almost like it's not necessarily always I'm doing what everybody else is because I'm lazy. It's like I'm doing what everybody else is doing because I think that's the expectation, right? And so like you play in a program that coaches a certain way and plays the game a certain way, and we're all guilty of this, I feel like, right? Where we're like, oh yeah, well, I'm just saying this because I feel like that's the right way to play. And obviously, as you evolve as a coach, you start recognizing things like it's like, I think the best thing about me being from Minnesota from a baseball experience standpoint is I literally didn't get coached. Right. And so probably the most fulfilling thing that I had as a kid was playing VFW baseball, and we dominated. And I remember I've said this story many times, so I won't go too deep, but it was just like I had a guy question. I had one of my other coaches from another sport say, what did those VFW coaches ever teach you? I'm like, and I didn't have an answer. I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, see, they're bad coaches. And now I look back, I'm like, bro, I never had a pitch called for me in high school, ever. And then when I got to Hamlin, it's like every single pitch is being called for me. And I made up, this is so psycho. I made up in my head that I called my own pitches. Like I believe that I did. And I went back and when I started coaching at Hamlin in 2015, they're like, no, we called everything. Like we have vivid memories of you shaking us off and us getting pissed off because you didn't do it. Right. But then to that point, I had people telling me the whole time once I got to college, you have to establish your fastball. You have to establish your fastball. And the coaches were like, oh yeah, when we learned that you were better when you threw more breaking balls, then you were great. I'm like, how is that? How did that take you 3 years to learn that? You know what I mean? It just, it's crazy. So Anyway, I want to get going into the development side because and I don't know that a lot of people recognize this. I don't even know the details, but I know that the Gophers have been playing some damn good baseball lately. So you've been there a little bit over this transformation. So we talked about how you're evaluating guys, how you're getting them in there. What are you doing once you get them in there to have the success that you guys have been having?
Well, I think the first thing is you got to take them through a standard movement assessment that we do with all of our guys. And from a hitting standpoint, we like to just try and get all their metrics out of the way right away. So we'll get them on blast, we'll get them on hit tracks, we'll get them on K motion, we'll get them on Rapsodo hitting, and we'll find out what they do, and we'll get a baseline just right then and there. But from there, really what I like to do is I like to see where they're at, and I like to, because I mean, obviously as a recruiting coordinator here, you bring these guys in with a certain level of understanding of how they're going to fit into your offense. And one of the things that I've tried to do over the last couple of years is really put forth some expectations of what our offensive philosophy is going to be, what it looks like, and how each player is going to fit into that individually. And so we call it our Wolfpack offense, where we give everybody a role, everybody has a mindset, and we let those guys try and, as athletes, try and fit into that mindset and that mold of what we're trying to do. And we'll put them through these movement assessments through K motion, blast, and then from there we'll take that data, we'll find out how they move, we'll find out what they do well, what they don't do well, and then we'll put together a routine and a plan for them every single day that they're working on, med ball throws or PVC pipe, or they got to work on the core velocity belts. They got to get more thrust with their hips. They got to, work on more torque, shoulder and hip separation, things like that, flexibility, balance. I mean, whatever it might be. And I think what I've found, to just simplify it, is you're going to have 17, 18 hitters. They're all going to be completely different athletes. They're all going to have completely different stances, approaches, and they're all going to be very, very unique in their own way. And the one thing that I've found is you can't coach this hitter like you're going to coach that hitter. They all have to be entirely different. The swings have to be designed entirely different. It has to be very individual. And it's really hard to do that because you're taking a number of different guys and you're trying to basically come up with a very individualized plan with them. But at the end of the day, coaching them like that is ultimately what leads to increased development, in my opinion, instead of just taking a guy and trying to mold him into a cookie cutter way of hitting. And so, for example, you're not going to take a guy like I'm trying to think of a guy from Hamlin that we could, you remember Donald Blunt? You remember that name from Oxford? You remember that? Yeah. So I'm not going to take a guy like that and try and get him to hit like your catcher that was from Iowa. You had a junior college catcher back then.
Ben Richardson.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. So, you're not going to try and make those two guys the exact same. You're going to give them both completely different routines. You're going to give them a completely different structure. And as long as they fit within the framework of your team and what you want the guys to accomplish, and you set those pillars right away of, hey, this is what we want you to do, and as long as you're going to stay within this philosophy, within this mindset, you'll fit into what we're trying to do here. And so a big part of this is communication. I think communication and finding the relationship with the player is huge, and getting them to educate themselves on, this is why we want you doing it. This is, what I see. This is, what the video shows us. This is what the metrics show us. But, what do you think? And trying to have those conversations with them and develop that relationship and give them that understanding of why we're doing this is really what I've found has been kind of the breakthrough. And it sounds super easy, just having relationships with players, but I think sitting down with them and really having that intimate relationship with them about multiple other, whatever it might be, their personal life, school, academics, their own relationships that they're involved in. I think having those talks with them and also bringing that back full circle to hitting, I think that has a big impact on them, and they know that you care about them as people, and you develop that trust. And I've found that to be the most beneficial factor, I feel like, in terms of getting through to them, but also increasing their development at the same time. I think that's been really big for me.
Is it weird that I am thinking of PJ Fleck when you're talking about relationships? And tell us a little bit about.
I just saw him actually not too long ago, driving away. So no, I didn't even think about him, to be perfectly honest with you. But
I was just curious. Like, do you guys have a relationship? Is there something like just so for the 2 cents, my 2 cents on this? I know nothing about him. My best friend Weston Germain is from Michigan. Absolutely loves PJ Fleck, and I just watched his end of the year conference. The end of the year thing, and I'm like, this dude is exactly who he says he is. And I can see that, like, that part of it. The Gopher football program, for the record, I don't know. I don't imagine a lot of our watchers are watching Minnesota Gopher football. No offense, but dude, the dude is unbelievable, and I can't imagine playing for that guy. Like, I would run through so many freaking walls for a guy like that. And I'm curious, like, how much of that, just like, does that have any effect? Like, are these football players? Are you guys hanging out with the baseball players? Is this something that culturally, as a Minnesota program in general, you're starting to see this? Because I mean, it's not a secret that the Gophers haven't been the most dominant force in the Big Ten for anything besides hockey, right?
Yeah. I mean, baseball, hockey have been really the two big things here, but I mean, with football really taking off this last year is definitely opened some eyes, because they did not start out like that under PJ when he first got here. And he had to build it from the ground up, essentially. But it's interesting you bring that up. We've always had a family atmosphere here, and I think as time goes on, you can learn from just about any coach, right? I mean, whether it's hockey, football, basketball, baseball, whatever. And I mean, I've listened to him talk, and just like you have, he's incredibly inspirational. He has the respect of his players, and that's something right off the bat, I think, that gets you, is that all the players listen to him. They've all bought in. And how do you get him to do that? Well, you got to talk to him. You got to be able to relate to him. And that was really the first thing that I took away from him, was how do you relate to kids as you continually get older? Because, you and I, we're going to get older. We're going to get up there one day to 40 and 50. I mean, I'm not thrilled about it, but, how do we continue to make ourselves relevant and relate to them? And it's through music, it's through movies, it's through, what's going on out there today. And if you can do those things and you can still be relevant and you can touch base with them, I mean, it could be something as simple as fantasy football. I mean, whatever it might be, I think having those relationships is key to development. I really do. And he's right in the thick with those guys all the time. He's part of the team. I mean, he's not separate. And I've always believed in that. I mean, going back to our time at St. Thomas, our coaching staff was really close with our players. We did everything with them. And I think that the separation barrier between, hey, he's the player, he's a coach, you guys, have to be completely separate. There has to be a totally different relationship. I think that is very old school way of looking at coaching. And it's one of the things that I never agreed with. And I look at it in terms of, there still needs to be discipline. There still needs to be that separation. Like, you're not going out to the bars with them and stuff like that. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. But there needs to be something there where we have that communication and we have this relationship where you're going to call me at 3:00 in the morning when something is wrong because you trust me, and that's going to lead over into our hitting talks or pitching or whatever it might be. And that trust factor is huge. I mean, that provides the basis for everything moving forward. And I think he's spot on about that. And family relationships, whatever you want to call them, I think it's the key to everything. I think it's the starting off point for everything, to talk about mechanics, biomechanics, whatever you want to get into as far as hitting, technology. And they're not going to listen to you unless they know that you respect them and that you care about them. And I've always come to the point where nobody is going to follow you. Nobody is going to listen to you unless they like you and they trust you. And you're not going to be able to get to that without a relationship. So, no, I'm I'm in on what he talks about because I think he's spot on. I think he's right.
I thought John was going to jump in there because I know the coach thing. Like one of the first things when I started working with John was he's like, nobody calls us coach. None of our kids get to call us coach.
I do the exact same thing, man. I'm with you. I don't let my guys call me coach either. So you and I are on the same page with that.
Yeah, the idea came from a thing that I'd heard a long time ago about if you call your manager or coach in pro ball, it's a $10,000 fine, because the concept is we're all baseball players. I'm just an old guy. That's all it is. Right. Yeah. So like, and the militarization of coaching is the worst thing that ever happened to me. It's all I got. It was yes, sir, no, sir. Do what you tell me to do. Buy in, be the guy, right? And I was the guy so much that I broke my elbow. Like the joke on our team my senior year is that the head coach was our dad. And then he ends up cussing me out saying that I faked my arm injury. I'm like, what are you talking about? The ball went 10 feet. There was a loud pop and it went 10 feet to the right. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So, the bad taste in my mouth on that, it just makes it so much easier to talk to some of the kids and really give them actual advice to like navigate this, because there's a lot of kids that didn't get the right information to get the tools early enough, and you can give them a fair shake if they actually want to make a run at pro ball, if they know how to get there. And I don't think most people know how to get there.
No.
So I spot on. This is an interesting analogy, as I'm known for. So I played jazz band at Hamlin, and my instructor,
musician, know your scales.
Dude, I'm totally blanking on my analogy. Here we go. Never mind. Moving on. It was some sort of expectation thing, and it's like I just wanted to play, and the amount. This is what it was. So we weren't very good. Hamlin, you don't go to Hamlin to play music. Like I just happened to go to Hamlin, and I happened to be good at trumpet, and so when we would go to competitions, we'd go to the Eau Claire Jazz Fest. Dude, Eau Claire is fantastic. Like these are some of the best bands in the country, and we're going there and we have no chance. We're like one of the worst bands there. And so what you do when you're not good is you're not hitting the notes, right? You're literally missing half the notes. And so he would tell us to be super quiet and then really loud and then kind of medium and then really loud and then soft. So like it's just covering it up. So I think about the same thing as like for the Midwest, John talks about the militarization, and it's here in San Diego because literally it's a military town. But in the Midwest, I think it's one of the fastest ways to get better baseball. And the problem is that's such a quick fix as opposed to playing the long game, right? So the quick fix is like if you can have tight practices and organize the crap out of them and like have some systems in place that allow kids to have some expectations, you're going to get a better product like now. Right? Like in 2-3 weeks, if you can have kids like knowing how to follow that. But again, it's just about the long game. And it's like that going back to the band guy, it's like I quit that because he was such a dick to me. Great guy. If I ran into him after I graduated, great, fantastic dude. But his expectations were not to get to know me and understand why I wasn't playing as well as I could have. Right? Like it was just simply, you're not practicing. You're not showing up for me, and it was shame. It's like, bro, inspire me to play music more than just like telling me how bad I am.
Yeah, exactly. I think you use the word inspire. Yeah, that's everything is
right.
I mean, how do you motivate kids? You have to inspire them, and it's an art. It really is. And we talk about relationships. There has to be a mutual level of respect there that. I mean, he's spot on when you say it. Like we're in there with everybody. Like we're all baseball players here, and that's the way that it should be. And I think that's where you get the best team chemistry, and you get guys that are going to really buy into what you're trying to say. And like you said, I mean, it's all about having a good experience and having trust in that guy. Because if you had trust in him, and he was halfway decent human being to you, you probably would have never quit, and things would have been entirely different, I'm sure.
And I would have found a way to practice more. Like it's just those things. Like there were opportunities for me to clean. I mean, you always got time. We all know this, right? Like there's always more time. And there were certain ways that I wasn't the calendar guy. I never was the put my things in a schedule. And so anyway, we don't need to keep talking about my music career. But I do want to ask you, okay, so you got the kids in, you got their swing, you have them understanding which part of the wolf pack they are. Okay. But how are you teaching them to have bats? Like you did touch on this already a little bit, but tell us a little bit about how you're having them compete. What are you having them look for? And I alluded to it last night, just about the fast, slow kind of concepts, but kind of what's your version of that?
Well, it starts with approach before it really starts about getting into mechanics, because, as we talked about a little bit last night, everybody's bodies are different. Everybody's going to move a little bit differently depending on, the type of shoulder and hip separation that they have. Pitch recognition is a big, big thing too. How the brain acts with the rest of the body and how they're able to, use different aspects of their body, whether it be balance, the mobility, hip and shoulder separation. I mean, a ton of different things, right? But for me, the biggest thing comes down to approach. And so we have 3 things that we have all of them do, regardless of mechanics, regardless of really ability level. They have to be aggressive once they get in the box. Bar none. They have to be aggressive. And so I want guys, as soon as they get in the box, they're not looking to walk. And I know some people probably won't agree with that, but I mean, for me, especially at this level, I'm about guys getting in there and being aggressive. And
you can't walk off the island.
No,
you cannot walk off the island. It's
I couldn't agree with you more. And the way that guys are being taught today, I mean, so everything that you guys are talking about pitching wise, basically I'm reversing that and I'm trying to throw it right back at you guys. So I'm talking to 2 pitchers here. So I mean, you can get on me if you want, but the big thing is. First of all, being aggressive as soon as you get in the box. And then the second thing, you have to get on time with the fastball. Everything we do from a training perspective is geared around hitting fastballs. And so today, we just got done with our guys a little bit ago here, and our machine was getting up to 105, 106 miles an hour with a high spin rate. They've got to be able to master that. They have to be able to. And we set the E-hacks in there. We have outstanding E-hacks and student managers that program those things. They're throwing cutters with ridiculous spin rates. They're throwing changeups, breaking balls that are 12-6 that you wouldn't see anywhere in baseball. And granted, it's unrealistic, but they have to be able to manage that. And for me, it's all about slowing that process down with the brain and getting them to understand that the way that their body moves and the way that it self-organizes, I want to put them in situations that are almost impossible. So when they get into a game, it's a little bit easier. It's a game of failure. So I want them to fail as much as possible. So I'm getting off track here, but being aggressive.
No, you're not. Keep going.
Right on track, bro. Right on track.
Yeah. You are just you're just putting this thing up for me right now. I'm ready. Yeah. I'm so excited.
It's so the 3 big things were being aggressive, being on time with the fastball, and then having a 2-strike approach. And so, for you guys, you talk about, I know pitchers that's bar none. The number one thing they want to do is strike guys out. And the number one thing that we've been really, really good at here since I've been here is our guys have struck out the least amount, at least when we've led the Big Ten in hitting, which has been 2016, 2017, 2018. We led in most offensive categories in all 3 of those years. And then last year, we led in hits and I don't know, something else before we got banged. We led in 4 or 5 categories. But anyways, when we're a really good team, we're the team that strikes out the least. And we're absolute, I don't want to use a 4-letter word here, but we're just pests with 2 strikes. And
we're not censored here. You're good.
Okay.
You can let it run, right?
Okay.
You got to. What you're talking about is some real fun right now. You're talking, and sometimes things get said in the middle of real fun.
Johnny Sintez is trying to end your fucking life, right? Like,
right? Like I'm coming for you, dude. Like, it's so funny that you said so. Let's talk a little strategy right there, because that's basically those big 3 right there for what you're doing. And my favorite part about this right here, and I don't know if you've ever thought of this or has anybody said this to you, but as an adult pitcher, one of my things that we've kind of done is I've gone back to some of these college tournaments and pitched in it. I pitched in the NBC World Series the past 2 years. At 34, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. So much so that they called my name out and said my age when I was starting on the first game, and I used it as fuel to yell at the other team while I was doing it. So the game that you see that is allowed, right? And I always say this about younger kids. If we had no adults, no umpires, no coaches, and everybody played the game, we would see a different game. It would be way more fun, right?
Yeah.
It'd be kind of what we're seeing right now in the big leagues where there's no fans. We got hot mics. People are saying stuff that you're not used to hearing, right? but we all know when we get in it, and we've seen that dude on the mound, and I come out and I go punchy to start the game, and I'm walking off the field staring in your dugout, wondering to know what you're going to do. There's a different level there. There's a different
100%.
idea.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so
100%.
So that fun part of the game, the what I like to say is the strategy, right? So one of my favorite things about looking back and looking what I've, you just got to learn and adapt in every situation is the college game, right? And so it's obvious to me that, like, and I don't want to call any colleges out, but I'll just be as vague as I can. But if I know what your entire offensive strategy is, like being aggressive, hunting fastballs, knowing what my 0-2 pitches are, I'm pretty sure I can dial up a game plan ahead of this to be able to combat this. You know what I mean?
Yep. Or
at least just put something forward. Is that something that you've seen too? I know you talked about a lot of individualization as too, and granted, you can only have so many pitches and so many options and scenarios of what's happening. But, have you seen this idea being attacked more?
Not as much. I see, especially for myself, as we've gone through this process now, I mean, really this going into the fourth or fifth year that I've utilized this, we've tried to be more of an adjustable offense. And so, for example, if we are going into a series where, guys are nothing but, breaking stuff, everything's away, everything's soft away, thumbers away, we got to be able to handle that. We've got to be able to command that outer third of the plate, and we've got to be able to take their game and throw it right back at them. If it's a team that is poor defensively and they defend the bunt horribly, at which we've run into a lot of teams, especially in our conference, that can't do that. We've got to be able to do that. And so we talk about this all the time about, being an adjustable offense isn't just about your game at the plate. It's on the bases. What can you do to throw a guy's rhythm off and to really get under his skin? And so one of the big things, and I would never tell this to anybody else in our conference, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically take your game and get you off your game as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We're trying to frustrate you, and whatever we find, whatever we try to do, I mean, our entire game plan is going to focus around that. And so I think being in an adjustable offense, using those three main components, really takes your game and we try and flip it on its head. So if you're a guy that's going to come out and you're a 94, 95 guy, and that's your thing, we're going to be on time with your fastball. We're going to be aggressive on it early, and, we're not going to miss. And if Cass is a guy who's got a pretty damn good slider and he's an effective velocity guy who's going to throw up in the zone, like we've got to be able to handle that. And so whatever the game plan is for that specific day, I think a lot of research, which we're pretty good at doing right now, and a lot of just, statistical analysis on our opponent, figuring out how they're trying to attack us, and then being able to take that and throw it back against them is everything in my opinion. I don't think there's enough of that at the big league level, to be perfectly honest with you.
I'm with you.
I don't think there's any of that.
You're speaking. There is some. I actually do know some.
There probably
some
is.
people,
yeah, I think there's some.
Right, but it's definitely not enough. And it's real obvious too, the teams that don't do any of it, right? Yes. And these teams consistently lose. They consistently make the same mistakes that we see on TV for decades, right? Like there's a systematic problem with it, right? I'm with you on that.
I couldn't agree with you. I've sat down with some teams to talk about this, and I mean, pro ball is trying to hire anybody and everybody these days. And I've sat down with certain teams and talked about offensive philosophy and changing the way that we do things. And I mean, everything is very one-dimensional right now. I'll tell you that. They have one way of scoring runs. I mean, you could look at certain teams right now. There's one way they're going to score runs, and if they don't get a home run, they're not going to score a game. They're not going to score at all. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, there's, in my opinion, very little today in the big league game of being an adjustable offense, finding different ways to beat your opponents. And I don't follow it from the pitching side as much, but I do know that whether it be game theory or a lot of other things that are being utilized with some upper echelon organizations right now, it's not as widespread as it should be. And I think offensive philosophy is nowhere close to where it should be right now. I do think hitting in that regard is well behind pitching in terms of how we're doing things right now, especially at the professional level. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're spot on.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cass.
No, I feel like that's been the case. Like, I have been hearing hitting coaches saying that forever. And I don't know. I think it's, I'm curious because we look at, I just said it last night, how many times have we turned on the TV and it's like, why are we throwing fastball after fastball after fastball after fastball? It's not weird to see 6-7 fastballs in a row, but like, people would be outraged if you saw 7 curveballs in a row. It's like,
right.
What are we talking about? Like, why is that so much worse? You see it in amateur ball. If I throw 7 curveballs in a row, the hitters are going to be bitching at me. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, but at the same time, when I got a team that's fouling off 35 pitches in a game, I'm like, it's the same exact thing.
It is.
I'm hearing myself say this stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I agree.
No, you're spot on. Yeah, you're spot on, man. I think you're right there, and we just get back to doing things. I don't know, probably because they're easy, probably because the ego in the game has not gotten out of it, or coaching at the professional level, maybe it doesn't get that deep. I've never played at the big league level, so I couldn't tell you what goes on in those dugouts and those meetings, but I would certainly do things a very different way if I could, but I've never been there, so I can't speak to that. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it makes me think about just like what you were saying, right? You gave me your offensive strategy. It was a pretty standard, generic offensive strategy for what it is, obviously individualized per inning and situation. But one of the funny things about when we went to the NBC World Series is I did it to show our clients that were with us, these college freshmen and sophomores, like, one, this is a conference tournament is basically what it is. And a junior college kid seeing what an actual week-long conference tournament looks like, big stage, lights. Funny side note, 2 of the kids the first year we went hadn't played under the lights before, because in California you just played day games. And so I was like, oh my God, I can't, you're 21 years old and you just went to the middle of America and this is the first time you pitched at night. Like, that's crazy. And of course, guess what? He did terrible, right? Wasn't comfortable, didn't understand, he was like, why am I sweating so much? I'm like, it's humidity, right? You sheltered California, beautiful kid, right? Like, it is what it is. You've never even crossed this bridge. But it's funny when you give these kids and you equip them with this information, like an ambush team or a team that takes after you get a strike, and you realize once you have them in the palm of your hand, you can just stop throwing strikes and they're still going to swing at it, right? That's our favorite part about like getting into the game. And so I remember watching this team that we were going to play, and I struck out the first 3 guys to start the game, and I could just tell by the way the first guy would stand up there, he just huge bat waggle, so much movement, and I'm like, dude, this kid's off the rocker. I mean, he must have had 3 Red Bulls. And so I started the game off with 3 changeups in a row to start off, and he just came out of his shoes and then looks at me, was like, what, junk baller? Like, he just got mad and yelled at me, and I was like, oh, if this is how it's going to be, like, this is going to be an easy day. Like, I don't even have to try. So I ended up going CG, striking out 11. And like, I think I threw like 102 pitches. And like, I just distinctly remember throwing fastballs up and in on everybody for a ball, and they all swung at it every time. And I was like, you guys have if you just took 2 pitches, you'd realize that I'm not throwing strikes, but nobody's taking pitches at all. They're fouling everything off because it's moving. They're getting frustrated, right? Because they're into the game. I'm walking around the mound doing this like half circus act, trying to make them seem like I really like into it, but they didn't realize that I'm just baiting them into swinging more, right? Yeah. And so like, there's this whole mental side of the game that you can actually teach if you break it down to, like we said, beginning of the game, of like what really matters, right? And it sounds like we're on the same page with that. Like, can you hit the ball off the wall or over it, or are you just gonna, negative 14 exit velo at 1,000, into the ground? Like, is that going to be your contact point of what you're going to do?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think everything, especially for offenses today, you got to find different ways to beat your opponent, because pitchers today are just, they're so good. And whether it be pitch tunneling, effective velocity, just straight up velocity, guys like Max Meyer that we had get drafted that could throw a 97 to 100 that could just blow you away. You have to find different ways to be able to beat your opponent. And yes, you have to be able to be on time with the fastball, but you've also got to be able to hit the breaking ball. But you've also got to have recognition of the strike zone. You've got to be able to take pitches that are on the outer third, and you got to be able to drive those pitches. I think there's just so much to your game today that you have to be able to do more, and you got to be able to handle different pitches in the strike zone. And so training on that, mechanics, the way that your body moves, and understanding how the body moves and how to hit those pitches. I mean, I can tell you, for left-handed hitters and getting that right-handed changeup, I mean, it's the toughest thing in the world, and how to spot it, and to know that it exists, and to be able to pick up that type of spin. But I mean, what we're really talking about here is discipline. But how do some of the best hitters in the world do it? I mean, you look at guys like, and I know he's cooled down, but like Charlie Blackmon, and then you look at the shifts on top of that today, and how can we offset those? I mean, things are hard for hitters today, but I think that's where we were talking about this earlier. Like, I mean, how can you get guys to be 4-dimensional hitters, and how can you get guys that are not just going to think, well, I'm going to be able to get, off cast, I'm going to be able to get a fastball middle in, and I'm going to be able to hit this pitch over the wall. Like, there's certain guys that you're just not going to be able to do that off of, like Jacob deGrom. Like, everybody's trying to go deep off of Jacob deGrom. Like, it's not going to happen. Like,
I'm so glad you see it too. Like, when he gets beat, it's like everybody turns into a slap, and it's just flare choppers and just seeds, on the ground.
That's the only way that you can beat him. And like, everybody's swinging out of their ass against him. Like, it's not going to work. And that's where I'm just like, I don't know how you think you're going to be able to beat guys like that, but it's not going to happen.
I want to say he threw like 14 cutters in a row between 90 and 95 the other day, and like 14 swing and misses.
Yeah, nobody could touch it.
When is anybody going to take a pitch and just not swing? When is anybody going to not swing at it? Like, I get it. It looks juicy, right?
That's where I come back to the ego of the game, because I just trying to remove your ego from the equation and take certain pitches and have discipline and understand the strike zone, which some guys are really, really, really good at doing, and other guys are just really, really, really bad at it. And I guess at the big league level, it's just totally different when you're dealing with those personalities and those egos and certain guys. But I mean, you look at guys like Trevor Bauer. Like, I love Trevor Bauer because I follow the Reds, and like, I mean, that dude is on this year. I mean, you're like, you cannot beat Trevor Bauer if you do not have an unbelievable game plan against him. And I mean, especially with the way that he commands the strike zone now, like, you have to have totally different approaches against guys like that to try and throw them off their game. And I hate to say it, because hitting coaches across the country, will crucify me for saying it, but I mean, trying to drop down a bunt or find a way to frustrate him, or do whatever it is that you can to try and throw him off his game. Like,
that's just strategy.
Yeah,
strategy.
Exactly.
We're talking about strategy. Like, right? And
100%.
you can be mad all you want hitting coaches, but like, it's strategy. The name of the game is still score more runs than the other team. Like,
yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree with you more.
One thing that I don't understand, and I really think it's more than, like, I know, like, people always say, like, Kevin Millar cheated his ass off. Gene Larkin always told me, like, lefty he had a chance, righty he had no chance, so he just guessed. He's always cheating. And I'm like, and he's always like, I'm always hitting first pitch fastballs. He's like, literally made my career on hitting first pitch fastballs. I'm like, why don't people actually guess? And that's where John talking about the fast slow thing, I think it made me realize, this is my guess, okay? I think people are scared to be wrong 10, 11, 12, 15 times in a row. And my point is that I think if you have the balls to freaking be wrong that many times in a row, there's a real good chance that you're going to get rewarded by being right 5 times in a row. And now we're hitting 250, and maybe we're hitting 300 because we actually guessed wrong, and maybe we had some adjustability in our swing. And it's like, how many guys are actually that overmatched that if they know that they're coming, know what's coming, they're not going to hit it, right? We're talking at your level, it starts becoming less and less, right? And so but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like I literally thought you were going to say guessing, but you know what I mean?
No, you're spot on. That is what it is. That's what hitting is it's guessing, especially at this level when you're facing guys that are throwing 97 to 100. Like, you have to guess. Like, you cannot just
started, like,
yeah. Like,
really.
you can't just sit on 97 and then adjust to an 84 mile an hour changeup. Like, that's like, it's just not going to happen. You have to sit fastball all the time, but you have to guess. And so what I tell our guys is 80% of hitting is guessing. It is. The other 20% is execution. Like, you have to guess. And that's where the analytics come into the equation. And that's where I think you were talking about, I think it was Paddock or whoever that threw the 2-0 changeups the other day, or threw 7-8 fastballs in a row. Like, I mean, if guys are doing that and you have numbers to substantiate that, like, you have to be able to not only guess right, but be on time with those guesses. And so, yeah, I mean, especially at our level, like, you have a 1 out of 3 chance, which is actually pretty good when it comes to hitting, of guessing right most of the time in college baseball, because he's only going to throw 3 pitches for strikes. And so a lot of what I tell our guys is, and this is at the college level, but I mean, how often are pitchers going to throw breaking pitches for strikes? I say less than 40%, especially with the numbers that we have. And I mean, at the big league level, and I don't know if this is true or not, but our pitching coach always says it, guys are going to miss their spot more than 60-70% of the time. I mean, that doesn't mean that.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That's like McDevitt, right? Ty McDevitt.
Yeah. That's Ty.
They miss all
the time. And really, they do. And so, as hitters, we have to be really good at guessing, but that's all about approach. That's all about going in there with the right offensive philosophy and saying, hey, we're going to get after John today because the dude throws 75% of fastballs and he's going to live middle away. I don't know if that's what you did, but I'm just speculating. And like, you have to guess. Like, you have to set your eyes.
My life we're talking about. Like, who's calling my pitches?
Or what kind of fastball?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, that's what it is. Like, you've got to set your eyes to a specific part of the strike zone, and you've got to guess. Like, this is where I'm going, and it is what it is, and I'm going to sell out to get this pitch. But I mean, really, what else are you going to do if a guy throws 97 and he's got nasty stuff and he's got 3 pitches that he can spin a ball, he can spin it away, he can go upstairs? I mean, you have to guess. I mean, you can't just react to that type of stuff today. I mean, you have like 150 to like 250 milliseconds to make that type of reaction. Like, I mean, it's too hard. I mean, hitting's way too hard.
That's where the fast slow comes to me right there. Right. So, to me, there's a fast, medium, slow too, but that's a whole different conversation. But as simple as you can make it right now, fast, slow, right? Anything but a fastball is slow, right? And so you run into these scenarios and these really high probability sequences of pitches, especially in 4 when you look at it, right? The most common one you're going to see in the game is fast, fast, slow, slow. It's the most common, right? Especially young kids grow up. Everybody says establish a fastball. You throw a fastball, you throw it for a strike, great. You throw the second one, it's a ball, 1-1, right? So if you teach this from the beginning, then you can start throwing these probability scenarios out to the hitters or to the pitchers. Like, okay, we know these guys take till they get a strike, right? So we're going to attack the strike zone, but then again, they may be on modified is what I remember it's called, right? So you have the option of swinging first pitch if that's what you're going to do, sell out, see the fastball. Otherwise, you're going to take till 2-0 or attack 3-1, right? That's an actual strategy of what guys are doing. So if, I remember when I was in college, I threw a CG against Montevallo, and I distinctly remember like picking up that like they were not swinging first pitch. And like we came in the first inning and told coach, I go, we're going to throw it right down the middle, first pitch, and I'm not going to try. And then we're going to bounce a slider second pitch. And I guarantee you they're going to swing it. Because I can just see bat on the shoulder, like they're not doing anything, right? And I would just be like, right in there. And then right after that comes up, the body starts moving and everything. And I'm like, this is crazy. I can't believe. So then snap it off. There's a ground ball. I'm like, Jesus, like I feel like I figured everything out, right? Well, then you realize like what you're saying, you got to come up with different strategies to it. So, even in high school, I remember like baiting pitching coaches at, 6'4", hitting 4-hole pitcher, first base, shortstop kind of athlete, right? So I would take G-hacks on deck and then G-hacks right before I get in the box. What do you think I was going to see first pitch?
Probably a first pitch fastball.
No, hammer. First pitch. I mean, if I'm taking just absolute man hacks right, on deck, right? I'm hitting
you're the guy. Okay, so you're the guy on deck.
I'm the hitter.
Okay,
I'm the hitter.
I got you.
I'm the hitter.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So coach
then
sees
you're going
me
to see
out
a first.
Right? There's no way this guy's going to be right. He's sitting fastball for sure. Well, sure enough, I hit like 12 home runs off breaking balls. Now, granted, with the old bats and a little bit short field, but I'm baiting this adult in as a high school player to throw me what I want, right? And so right, so he throws that first pitch. Let's say it's down, I can't reach it, right? Well, what's coming next?
Probably another breaking ball, I'm guessing.
Right, probably another breaking ball.
Yeah,
because he knows I'm sitting fastball. So I just would sit breaking ball first two pitches. Now, if you threw a fastball, I would just take it like I was going to go at it. Like I just had this strategy. So then what's coming second pitch? Probably a breaking ball.
Probably another breaking ball. Yeah, probably another breaker.
So like I just learned how to hit the breaker early, and then started seeing like you hear these stories like Manny Ramirez would make himself look stupid in his first at bat against breaking balls, and then come up his second or third time up in a big situation, hit a bomb out, and bait the guy into it. You know
exactly.
And so those are the kind of things that I hear in a lot of the big leaguers that I played with. They would just tell these stories about Romo tells a story about facing Miguel Cabrera, and then I think he just did the at bat on a podcast somewhere, and it's exactly he was like. He goes, I throw the slider. He chases it with his feet. I knew he was kind of sitting on it. So then I throw like two fastballs in a row, and I hadn't thrown a fastball the whole game, like the whole series. And like he sneaks 289s in on the black, and Cabrera gets confused about it, and he's like, where did these two fastballs come from? And he waited to the end of the World Series to do it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's all strategy.
Right.
When John started sharing this stuff with me of just like fast, slow, and talking about just like, I mean, you get out of the country, and it was always the stories about him playing in Mexico, and then you talk to guys who played across seas, and it's like these people are literally playing for their life. Like today, like I need to save my life today. Also, there's 2-week contracts, the whole thing. So what I was always thinking of is like, if I'm facing Edina, right? I know what the kids are like, and I know who's coaching them. And it's like, why don't we coach these things, right? Is the same thing if you're playing like a team from the sticks. It's like, it's so easy to understand that, but we don't open the kids' eyes to these things. And again, I think it's the same thing of guessing. It's like, and this is me maybe projecting, but I had the fear as a coach of giving them wrong information. And it's like, I don't want to tell you that St. Thomas is going to throw 95% fastballs away all day long, because they might throw 75% fastballs away. I'm not, right. That's not literal, but you guys do throw a shit ton of fastballs, and you're still a you guy. And, but you know what I mean? It's like, why not? And the same token, it's like, I saw Hamlin, who's very fastballs up. Like, so we see guys throwing 75 miles an hour, but they're throwing all junk. We suck. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, and it goes back to you teaching them to be adjustable and yada, yada, yada. But moral of the story here is I just think kids actually know their opponents really, really well. They're great at judging. They're really good at knowing what that person actually is. And if you have a bad read on them, they beat you. Like, who cares? Right. But more often than not, it's this information that's right at the tip of your fingers. If you simplified it into fast, slow, and said, hey, I'm facing I should use a different one. But, I mean, even you, like, I'm facing not you. I'm facing Max Meyer. Like, I don't want to be facing him. Like, I'm going to be facing him a lot differently. But also, he's got fighting necklaces. He's got the backwards, like, he's got the whole thing. So that's something that I'm going to take into consideration. Right. I coached against him when he was a sophomore, by the way. And I want to ask you this before we leave. I know this is off in left field, so we can come back to this. How the hell do you get Max Meyer?
Long story.
Or guys like him, right? Like, how do you get Matt Fiedler? How are you getting guys to stay in? Because the biggest thing I saw from being critical is, like, there were a lot of guys that left. You don't get Logan Shore, right? You don't get some of the better talent. You're getting some of the better talent. What the hell are you doing, Pat?
Well, I think number one, it comes back to those relationships that we were talking about earlier. Max actually played for me when I was a volunteer and I needed to find a way to make some money, so we started a prospect team, and he was on it when he was 15, and nobody recruited him out of high school, at least not initially. And I loved him because of the way that he competed. And he was a little guy. He was like me. He was my size. And he didn't pitch at the time. He was a hitter. He was a second baseman. Yeah, he was a shortstop, second baseman.
Yep.
And everything he did, like he was diving headfirst into second. Like he was a good little left-handed hitter. Like he was just competitive. He was mean. And he was like what John was talking about earlier. Like he would strike a guy out or get a hit off a guy, and like he would stare him down. And he was smaller than everybody else. So like he had that competitiveness to him, but he was also a hockey player too. So he had kind of that mean streak to him. And then as time went on, like obviously he blossomed into a pitcher, but just like his personality, his attitude, like you fall in love with it. And like the same thing with Matt Fiedler. Like Fiedler wasn't all too different from Max, other than the fact that Max threw 100 and Matt, Feeds through 93, 94. But both of them had very similar temperament. They both had the same attitude, competitiveness. And I kind of gravitate towards guys like that. And I think you get with these kids when they're younger and you find, that thing that, as you know, that I think Verdugo had that where he could get some buy-in immediately. Like I don't want to throw him in the same PJ Fleck category, but he could talk to you, and I think that's everything is finding that relationship.
I love Dugo. He's not PJ Fleck. I love Dugo, but he's not PJ Fleck.
No,
for the record, he got us to be a bunch of bastards. Like Tony Rogers in right field. Like that kid never hit a ball not on his front foot. But he caught. Speaking of St. Olaf, he had 11 putouts in St. Olaf. 11 putouts. What? There's 21 in this game. Like it's crazy. But not to PJ Fleck.
No, but like level. Guys that could motivate you and guys that you'd buy into. And I think having that personality and that relationship is huge when it comes to recruiting. And you have to ask Max that. Max would be a pretty good judge of what he saw right away and why he came here. But same thing with Feeds. But yeah, we're doing a better job of getting those kids in here, trying to appeal to them a little bit more. But I think the technology and trying to keep the program, 21st century and, giving them what they want. I think that's huge. And you got to be able to relate to kids today. And I think that's everything.
I think there's a little piece right there for something you said before, and I want to ask you a question because I feel like this is a major thing for maybe some of the recruits or some people that are watching this. And you mentioned some of the technology, right?
Yeah.
Help me. I want to ask you about your recruiting process just real quick. If you could send blast data, hit tracks data, video analysis, Rapsodo data ahead of time, and you're trying to impress a school, like is that valuable to you guys?
Kind of. It comes back to if you can play. And, you can have, as I've seen with a lot of kids, you can have the best data, you can have the best metrics, but if you cannot perform, if you cannot be a winner, and that's the word I'm going to use, is if you are a winner and you can go out there and produce and get results. And we have had a lot of conversations with our own, the coaches on our staff about this, Ty and I specifically. Everything in life is really about results. Everything is. It is. I know we talk a lot about the process and we get our guys to buy into that process, but at the end of the day, it comes down to results. And wherever you go, if you do not produce results in the real world, you're going to get fired. And if you do not produce results at the big league level, you're going to get told to go somewhere else, regardless if you're Max Meyer or you're a 19th rounder, from, San Quinto Junior College. Like, it doesn't matter. Whoever produces and whoever gets the results, regardless of their process, regardless of their metrics, whoever produces the results is going to succeed and is going to continue to move on. And you see at the big league level, you were there. It's the guys that produce. And so whoever does that is going to continue to move on. And so you look for that at the high school level. You look for the dominating player. And is that valuable information? Sure, it's a part of the equation, but it's not everything. And I think some kids think that it's everything today. Like, I have 110 exit velo off the tee. Like, I should be recruited. Well, no, you better be hitting 450 to 500 at the high school level, because like if you're striking out 30, 40, 50% of the time in high school baseball, like those numbers are going to multiply just like they would, from college to the minor leagues. And so, I mean, everything plays into the equation. It's their grades, it's their character, it's, I mean, a ton of different things that, it's going back to one of the questions that you asked earlier, Cass, was, what's one of the first things that you do? And I forgot to mention this. I give every kid a VAC test. Do you know what that is? It's a visual, auditory, kinesthetic test, and you find out which way that they listen the best. And for a lot of kids today, it's visual, and for our parents, it was auditory. It was stuff through the radio, or reading, or auditory books, or whatever. Like,
that's really interesting.
Or and the other thing I give them is a personality test.
Which
what
one?
Type of person? The color one. Have you seen that one? You give them a personality test, and they test into a specific color. So like red is guys that are really good with girls, and they're very passionate about things. And then some guys are yellow, and then some guys are green, and then they have these different types of characteristics that match up to what type of personality that they have. And then you tie that in with how they're best suited to listen or take in information visually, kinesthetically, auditorily. And so that type of stuff is extremely valuable. But that type of stuff has been huge for me in figuring out the ways that they listen best and take in information. So honestly, to come back full circle here, I'd like to find out their personality as much as I'd like to know their metrics on some of these guys, because that shows me how I can relate to them and what type of personality they have, but also what type of listeners they are and what type of interest they have. I mean, that stuff is just as valuable to me as metrics are as we get into the recruiting process.
I love how that question and answer transitioned so well through that. Right, that was really cool. I love the personalities thing. So that's interesting, because I think that's exactly the way we feel about it. Is like some of these testing modalities just don't make sense to me, right? Like, I'd rather send you real Rapsodo hitting data of a guy in a live at bat. Be like, check this guy's out. We did a live at bat indoor league. His average exit velo 78, right? Launch angles, this, but check out his hard hit percentage. Check out, he did this against lefties. He did this against righties. He didn't strike out as much. He played the game, right?
Yeah.
And so, help me with this. I have a little theory on this side of it. Is I think that a good way to sum up power and hitting is just like average ball batted distance, right? I think that Mike Trout, one of the reasons why Mike Trout is the most valuable player, that besides he hits the ball, but I feel like his average batted ball distance is just higher than anybody else, because I always see it in the air. I always see it flying over 320, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, rarely does he get out front, top a ball, and hit a chopper. You know what I mean? And so, being able to explain that with data as well is I think that side of it is going to be coming around and more. I mean, you talked about TrackMan. I mean, that's on our radar too for our new facility, what we're trying to do. And I think their latest unit does pitching and hitting at the same time, which I think is just tremendous for.
Does it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does.
No, Pat, seems you nodding like you got it.
No, I've heard that the new units, because we have the Rapsodo hitting that we used in our indoor last year, and it was extremely effective. And I do know, just from Tide being able to deal with those guys a little bit, that the next unit that they're coming out with is going to be able to encapsulate both of them. I mean, everything is with technology today. I mean, hit tracks should be able to give you RPMs off the bat, stuff like that, and seeing how you're spinning the ball as hitters. And John, like what you're talking about, like the stuff about Trout, like basically well hits, like tracking those and getting them from live in game at bats, like that is the most valuable data that you can get. Who hits the ball the hardest? And so, like when we go to certain places that don't have TrackMan data, and how do we record at bats? We basically do it off of what we call well hits, and I don't give anybody a well hit who hits the ball on the ground, never. So, what is the well hit percentage? How many quality at bats are they getting?
You need to put that on a shirt tomorrow. Like,
well, we put it in our hitting facility. Yeah, it's in there. It's I had a stat in there because we've got a big whiteboard. So it's I think it was like it's like 7% or like 6% of extra base hits are hit on the ground or something like that. It's something like super, super low. And I've got it in big bold letters in our hitting facility is I think it's 4%. It's 4% of ground balls turn into extra base hits. So 96% of the time, the ball better be in the air or you're not going to be able to do very much at the plate. So no, it's getting back to your t-shirt thing. We've got a ton of those sayings on our board and our hitting facility. So yeah, it's coming. The t-shirt should be next though. It should be our
it's funny.
Our BP top.
I'm wearing our motto right now. It's funny, but we tell this to kids all the time, and it's like you need to be a pitching gangster, like on the mound when you're going out there, because like
I like that.
You're not trying to let anybody hit the ball. Like this isn't charity. Right. Like you don't get to just step into the box and just do whatever you want. That's not what's happening today.
Exactly.
You know, and so like teaching that idea is important to us and what we're trying to do. And as we venture into hitting too, like it's the same thing. Like there's so much, right. There's so much to the game of that really is fun. Like we said this the other day too, like, isn't it funny that we just stopped playing it?
Yeah.
Like what it's one of the greatest games in general, like ever made. And like, we just stopped playing it. You get too busy, life happens, stuff like that. I mean, obviously we're in the industry, but you talk to these people and it's like, oh, well, I wasn't good enough. And it's like, well, why do you have to stop playing the game? Like the game is still there.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Itself.
I know.
You know?
Hey, well, Minnesota, there are
age.
some freaking lifers in amateur baseball in Minnesota. So speak for yourself, John Sintez. Like,
well, I'm just saying, as the masses, like if you look at the percentage drop, what it is. But no, I'm with you. I mean, I'm a lifer. I'm planning on throwing 90 till I'm 40. I've seen too many guys do it. I saw 100 at 41, and it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And then I just talked to the guy, and he found all he's ever done is thrown 100 since he was 18. Like, it's the craziest thing. Like, it just makes so much sense. Like, oh, I'll just get to 100, stay at 100, and just keep throwing 100. Like, you just never stop throwing in the 22 years that you played professional baseball. Like, that's
pretty cool.
Right?
That's pretty awesome. 141. That's awesome.
Right. And degenerate genetic freak. That's the only way I can explain it. Like, he would shuffle fire. He would shuffle fire from home plate after a long toss, and if he couldn't throw it out of center field, then he wouldn't pitch that day.
That's a unique way to go about it. That's
right. And he'd be like,
cool.
I'm down. Went 3 days in a row. I'm down today. Like, he just wouldn't throw in the game. I'm like, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, after BP, he'd go over there, just cold. We're just chilling, and he would just rip one. And every day I would just watch it in winter ball. I'd be like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And it would sail. Crazy. It would just sail out. And I'd be like, all right, guess he's playing today. Guess I'm not in the eighth. Guess I'm in the eighth today. I'm not in the ninth. Right.
Yeah, that is pretty nuts. Cass, we didn't see that too much in the MIAC. We didn't see guys being able to throw balls like that, man. That's pretty unique.
Dude. Yeah, MIAC is a whole different thing, but
yeah. Well, hey, we've been rocking an hour and a half, so I don't want to eat up too much more of your time. It's getting a little late over here, but man, this has been awesome. I want to extend the invitation whenever you make your way over to San Diego. Please hit us up, man. We'd love to show you the spot. I mean, we start construction on it this week, and we'll be putting a bunch of really good YouTube content and stuff out from there. I think there's a way to do it where it's fun, right? It should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. It was good to get on here and talk a little bit, and look forward to following up with you guys later on. I appreciate for having me on.
Thank you so much, Pat.
Why don't you just sign off for us real quick? Let everybody know how, if anybody's interested in reaching out to you or anything, like how can they do that, and anything else you want to say?
Yeah, just by email. I'm not sure if you have that, Cass, but it's casey370@umn.edu. If there's any questions, and feel free to reach out with any questions or anything in general. Anything I can do to help promote hitting, offensive philosophy, and what you guys are teaching, the fast, slow is awesome. It's very similar to what we teach our guys about there's two different ways that they're going to be able to get you out. They change speeds, they change location, and having the mindset, the mechanics, and the approach to offset that. Same thing that you guys are talking about, whether it's being pitching gangsters or having a wolf pack mentality. It's very much the exact same. So if there's any questions, feel free to reach out. And thanks again for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure, man. I appreciate it. Definitely.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you need anything else, let us know.
Awesome, man.